Okay, we're continuing here in Chaim's commentary on the Haggadah, and we left off in the paragraph of Avodim Hayinu Lepar Mitzrayim, and then it says, "V'ilu lo hitzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu." If HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not have taken us out of Mitzrayim, then anu v'nei b'nei, we and our children and our grandchildren, we would still be slaves in Paro and Mitzrayim. So Chaim asks, is that really true? HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a haftacha, he promised Avram Avinu by the bris bein habasar and by the covenant of the parts, that there's going to be a nation, they're going to oppress you, they're going to enslave you, but I'm certainly going to take you out. So how could we say over here that if it wouldn't be for the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had taken us out, we were going to be stuck in Mitzrayim? Of course He's going to take us out. He already promised that He's going to take us out. So he answers the question and he says, of course Hashem would have taken us out. There's no doubt about that. But what the Haggadah is pointing out over here is that we were on such a low level at that time that we had no schus and we had no merits of our own that we could have deserved to have been taken out of Mitzrayim. So the only reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out, not because we did anything so valiant that we deserved to be rescued and brought to a geula, to redemption, but rather because since that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avram Avinu as the emissary of Klal Yisrael so much time before, therefore He took us out of Mitzrayim. He says further over here that there are two things that happened to Klal Yisrael while we were slaves to Paro Mitzrayim. Number one is that it was an avdus, a physical avdus, a physical slavery. We were captive, we were working, and we were beaten very hard. And second of all, we were subservient to the Mitzrayim, meaning that besides the fact that we were their slaves, but the Mitzrayim had power over us. We walked around in fear and fright and worry all of the time, and we felt inferior to them, we were beneath them. So he writes like this. The Haggadah is telling us the following, that had we not left Mitzrayim ever, it's very possible that the physical slavery would have ended. I think it's been pointed out by others, there almost has never ever been a slave a nation that was enslaved that never went free. Every single nation that was ever enslaved at some point in their history, they were freed. Now they might not have gone out of that country, but they're no longer the slaves that they once were. So let's assume that Klal Yisrael, who is the Am HaNivcha, the chosen nation, we certainly at one point would have left the slavery, the physical bondage and slavery that we had. However, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not have taken us out of there the way that He did, so then we would still have that slave mentality, that feeling that we are subservient and we are inferior to the Mitzrayim. So even if we would have gone free, but if you don't have the ultimate freedom, which is the spiritual and the emotional freedom, so then it's not a complete chayrus, a complete freedom, and therefore Hashem is the one that had to come in there, remove us, and take us out of everything. Then it says, "Anu v'neinu v'nei b'neinu," we and our children and our grandchildren. So Rav Chaim points out that any time that it says anywhere in Torah, 3 generations, which that's what it is here, we and our children and our grandchildren. So it's not 3 generations only. 3 generations always means 3 generations and beyond, which means that had HaKadosh Baruch Hu not taken us out of Mitzrayim, then all of the future generations of Klal Yisrael would have been trapped over there in the land of Egypt. V'afilu kulanu chachamim, even if we were all wise men, kulanu nevainim, people of understanding. Says Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky that the Torah, or anywhere in Torah, Chazal speaks in a way that it always puts chachamim, the chacham, wisdom, before bina, before deeper understanding. It works like this, as Rashi explains and others explain. Chachma is when you acquire information. Your Talmud Chacham is the one that is constantly working and learning to acquire more information in the Torah. And a Navain, someone that has Bina is always the idea that he's Mevin Davar Mitaych Davar, that he understands the wisdom that he acquired in a deeper way. So you always need to have Chachma, wisdom first, and then you will have the Havana, then you will have the deeper understanding. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, there's only one place in the Torah that it switches the order of instead of Chachma, or Chacham, and then a Navain, it says a Nava and then a Chacham. Who knows? The one place in the Torah that it switches the order. First, it speaks about the having the deeper understanding, and then it speaks about having wisdom. Exactly. By Yosef at Tzaddik, when Yosef was called before Paro, and he interpreted the dreams, and he began to explain to Paro what's going to happen. There'll be the 7 years of famine, the 7 years of plenty, and make sure during the 7 years of famine you store away everything. And he told them you have to find someone that is a Navain ve'achacham. You have to find someone with the deeper understanding, and he's also a Chacham, he's also a wise man. Says of Chaim, the reason that he started with the Navain, with the one who has a deeper understanding, is because he already gave him all the facts. He told them what's going to happen, he told them how it's going to happen, and he told them what this man has to do in order to make sure that the country is able to survive and run itself in the years of the famine. So since he already gave him the Chacham, he gave him the details, so he needs someone that first and foremost now is a Navain who will understand what to do with that information and run the country accordingly. So he asks, if that's the case, so then why did he have to have someone that was a Chacham to be obviously if he's a Navain, so then he had to have Chachma first. So why does Yosef say, first a Navain, then a Chacham? He says because the person that was going to be required to have this position as second in command to Paro would be running the country. And if he does a good job, he's going to be running the country for quite some time. In order to run a country, you have to have a lot of chachma, you have to have a lot of wisdom, and it's constantly learning and reviewing and going through things to make sure that you're doing it in the right way. And therefore, Yosef HaTzadik included over here the idea that there has to be chachma, there has to be wisdom as well. A little bit more, v'chol amarbe l'sape b'yitzias Mitzrayim, anybody who is marbe, they increase, telling over the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus, Hareze Meshubach, that person is Meshubach, that person is praiseworthy. So he says it would seem like, from these simple words in the Haggadah, that the basic mitzvah of the night of the Seder is just tell over the story the way that it is in the Haggadah. And that would be the basic mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. And if a person goes further and he's marbe, he does more, like the Haggadah is saying, and then he is meshubach, then he's praiseworthy. However, when the Shulchan Aruch deals with this halacha, the Shulchan Aruch says that a person is required, is chayiv, to occupy himself with telling the Yitzias Mitzrayim the entire night until sleep overtakes him. So you see in the Shulchan Aruch that what? That it's not just that being marbe makes you praiseworthy, increasing the telling of Yitzias Mitzrayim the entire night is the chiyuv, is the obligation that a person has. So how can it be that it says, if you tell the more that you tell over the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, Meshubach, you are praiseworthy. The Shulchan Aruch says, well, that's what you have to do anyway. Praiseworthy makes it sound like you're doing something beyond the letter of the law. So he explains that the Haggadah is adding over here kol amarbe, that anyone who tells over is telling us how to fulfill the mitzvah in the optimal way. And that is, you can't just tell over the story of the Seder of the Haggadah in the same fashion. Rather, the best way to fulfill the mitzvah over here of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim is you have to elaborate in the style of the Sipur in the story itself. Meaning, you have to add new material, you have to add new divrei Torah, you have to have chidushim, you have to have insights into the Haggadah. If you're going to sit there by the Seder table this year and tell over word for word what you said last year, so then you have not enhanced the story of Yitzias Mitzrayim at all. If you break out the Maxwell House Haggadah with no commentary, just nice pictures of Uncle Max and Aunt Trudy over there, and then you think that that's what's going to make the Seder memorable and meaningful, and that's how you're going to fulfill the mitzvah, he says that's not how it works. The way that you do it is, within the telling of the Haggadah itself, you have to enhance and embellish and add new ideas and new insights in the Haggadah, and that way, by doing what you're obligated to do, which is tell over, until sleep overtakes your eyes, you'll be marbe, you'll increase, and you'll be meshubach, you'll be a person that is praiseworthy. And we'll leave off with just this one last idea over here, very beautiful idea. He brings down that there are many mefarshim who say over that it says kol marbe, L'saper b'yetzias Mitzrayim, anybody who increases the telling over of the exodus from Egypt, they are praiseworthy. So they want to be medayik, they want to make a diuk in the language of the Haggadah, that the mitzvah that makes you praiseworthy is if you tell over about the Yetzi, you tell over about the actual exodus itself. The signs and the wonders and the miracles and the maivsim, all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. You speak about Kriyas Yamsuf, you speak about HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a miraculous Yetziyah, a miraculous exodus. However, don't spend time on the night of the Seder spending too much time speaking about the slavery, speaking about the moror, speaking about the bitterness that we had, because if a person will speak about the bitter life that Klal Yisrael led, and they'll speak about the slavery and the hardships and the pain and suffering that we went through, perhaps it will cause a person distress, and we're sitting by the Seder, we want to be in the best mood possible. That's many of what the Meforshim say. Rav Chaim Kanievsky argues on that. And he says, Adarab, on the other hand, he says you should elaborate on the slavery, and you should elaborate on the hardships, and you should elaborate on the suffering that Klal Yisrael went through in the Avdus, in that which we were Meshubah, that we were enslaved in bondage to the Mitzrayim. And why? Because when a person will begin to tell over how bad it really was, and there's plenty of Chazal throughout, Shas and Midrashim and the like, that will explain to you how bad it was to be a Jew in the times of the slavery, the more that you begin to understand just how much we were suffering, it's that much more that you will appreciate when we speak about the Geula, we speak about the redemption and the Yetzias Mitzrayim. You cannot appreciate what a Geula, what a redemption is, if you don't know where you came from. And therefore says Reb Chaim, if you'll speak about in detail and in depth all that we had to go through, what it meant to be a slave and to watch your child, God forbid, get shoved into the bricks of the walls of the pyramid because they ran out of mortar. And if you'll talk about all of the days that we just ate matzah and a little bit of water and there was no food and it was hard, back-breaking labor constantly, the more that you'll read about that, and then you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out, then you'll be able to appreciate the nisim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made in Yetzias Mitzrayim.